All right, hey everybody, welcome to Trending. Today is Thursday, March 3rd. It's about 9:30. We are here at Ridgepoint in the studio. It still smells like grease and sugar. We still got New Year's cookie aromas and sugar comas going on around here. We had a great time last night, so thanks to everybody who came.
Absolutely. It was
really fun time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, good day yesterday.
Yeah.
So this is Trending. We take the day's trending topics. We try to talk about them from our faith perspective whenever it's kind of applicable to what's going on in the world. Yeah. So this happens every once in a while, Joe, where we kind of take an audible, and we're going to talk about some of the trending topics today, but we're also going to just throw some other stuff that we just thought would be good to talk about.
Sounds good, man.
So some of this is trending, and some of it will be trending after we're done, I'm sure.
That's right. We're going to put it on
I'm sure it'll. Yes. Twitter is listening. Hello, Twitter.
Yes.
Here's some new stuff for you to talk about.
That's right.
Okay.
Serving it up.
Yes.
Yes.
So obviously, Ukraine and Russia is still on everyone's minds, as it probably should be. Yeah. Things continue to develop day by day. I know that one of the major cities, I think, got taken by Russia yesterday. There's just a lot going on over there. So I had a couple thoughts. What's your most recent thoughts? What are you following in that story?
Yeah, I think it's just been a surprising thing for a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people in harm's way. I heard a couple reports that like over 1 million Ukrainians have now gone to Poland and other parts. So 1 million refugees going to other places. That's obviously something very concerning. Mm-hmm. You hear the stories of like this resistance from Ukrainian, not just troops, but also their civilians and citizens standing up. You also hear that like maybe 6,000 Russian soldiers have died already. Mm-hmm. So put that in perspective. That's more troops than American troops died in 20 years of war in Afghanistan. Wow. That's how many Russian troops have died
in a week,
in a week of combat. And so folks are surprised or obviously nervous. It's devastating. Obviously economic stuff going on. And there's like 1,000 other micro stories because of Russian citizens reacting this way, and then companies making sanctions against Russian people, like even like the hockey community. So one of our big brands is CCM, and they said we're no longer going to put Russian players on our marketing until this thing's resolved. And so that's obviously like this 1,000 little things come up when these things happen. And so obviously very concerning, and we continue to pray and continue to try to figure out how can we as Christians in a peaceful way interact with some turmoil like this.
Yeah. One cool thing, I got an email in my inbox this morning. We chatted briefly that there's a lot of MB people doing some really good work. So our Multiply missions agency is doing a lot of work in Ukraine right now. I know MCC is sending a lot of relief. MB Foundation, our financial arm, is setting up like some kind of fund to help fund some of the stuff that's going on there. So it's kind of cool to see. A lot of times MB, we are kind of a small denomination. We get kind of forgotten in the mix of a religious world. But I'm glad that our little denomination cares a lot about this, and they're doing some good work about it. Yeah. And one other thing I thought was interesting. So on Stephen Colbert's show, I think it was right after the State of the Union, so 2 days ago. Yeah. Bernie Sanders was on, and one thing that he said, which I thought was just a good reminder for us, is he said that the Russian people are not our enemy. Mm-hmm. Like Putin's making a lot of bad decisions, but he said there's a lot of really good people in Russia who are just getting dragged along, no fault of their own. He said I think it's like 7,000 Russians have been arrested for protesting the war so far. Yeah. And when you're arrested in Russia, some bad things could happen. So people are putting their lives and their careers on the line to try to stand up for justice and equality. Yeah. And so we forget that. Like we often deem Russia as the bad guy, but it was just a good reminder for me that there's actually a lot of really good people in Russia who are trying to help this thing. So yeah, I can't imagine, like, if you're in Russia right now and you don't like what's going on, like, that'd be tough to watch your country be dragged in the mud for the whole world to see just because of something your leader's doing. So it's a rough deal.
Yeah, someone brought to light how, like, because of the internet being censored there, like, a lot of Russian civilians don't even know what's going on.
Right.
And so people are writing Yelp reviews on Russian restaurants and saying, hey, your country's going to war against Ukraine. It's like trying to alert people, because some people, it's hard to believe. Yeah. They have no idea what's going on. And so what a complex situation there.
Very sad. So we'll continue to obviously keep a close eye on that. Yeah. Okay, so we look at the top trending topics today. There's a lot of sports stuff. The Lakers are horrible.
They are.
They should be this like all-star team, and they're just not. Yeah. So people are talking about the Lakers. There's a lot of sports stuff. We won't go too deep into that. There's political stuff, of course. I saw a couple of politicians are making news for saying and doing some morally horrible things. Right. we don't really want to talk about that. So we're gonna call, this is where our audibles come into play here.
Okay.
So we're not gonna talk about anything else that's actually on the trending list today.
Okay.
But a couple of the things that are just in the culture that I think would be good for us to talk about.
Sure, let's do it.
So one was, so we're in the season of Lent.
Yeah.
Yesterday was Ash Wednesday. And we're just in that season leading up to Easter. And we've sort of had conversations like this before where there's a lot of the Christian tradition that honestly Protestant evangelicals don't know a lot of the history, a lot of the kind of culture around those kinds of things. We don't really do Ash Wednesday, really, a lot of us anyway. So you are a scholar. You're very learned in these areas. So I thought it'd be good for you. Just give us a crash course on Lent and Ash Wednesday. Why isn't it more a part of our tradition?
Yeah.
I'd love to just hear you talk about that.
I got it. So Lent means 40 or 40-ish. And so there are 6 weeks in the season of Lent. So we've come up out of like the post-Christmas, post-Epiphany season. And now we're in the season of Lent before we get the season of Easter.
Okay.
And then Holy Week's got its own little liturgy, it's called a Triduum, the three Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday before we get to Easter Sunday.
Yep.
So there's like 40 days from now, Ash Wednesday, into the Triduum.
Okay.
And it's a season of lowliness. It's a season of repentance, and it's marked by Ash Wednesday, where a lot of people take the sign of the ash, and you probably saw people on TV interviews, or maybe you're out and about, and they look like their forehead was dirty. I think Colbert called it like, which priest's thumb is the biggest, right? Nice. And so I just think the reason that more people are becoming aware of it is because we are not staying so stanchioned away from different parts of our Christian experience. We've talked about this before, how we're now becoming better friends with people who have different church experience than ours. Yeah. And so they're sharing the story of why they do it. And but the season of Lent is a season of fasting and repentance. People give up stuff. Our Catholic brothers and sisters will just do fish on Fridays, give up the rest of the meat diet on Fridays as a way to lower themselves and to humble themselves. What's cool about Lent and the Easter season is this, and I'll just kind of leave it here, and people could Wikipedia the rest, right?
Sure.
I heard this said before. So Lent is 6 weeks long, so there's like 6 weeks of fasting, right?
Okay.
But it gives way to the season of Easter, which is 7 weeks. Okay. And so the feast always lasts longer than the fast. Oh, that's cool. I think there's two parts of the nature of a Christian. We do experience a loneliness. We do humble ourselves. The Psalms say that we afflict our souls with fasting, right? But then it gives way to celebration. So at the end of the day, like we are a celebration people, but we also know celebration is more sweeter after a time of struggle, after a time of discipline and fasting. So why are we hearing about this now? I think because of the Protestant Reformation, many Protestants in their denominations feel like Roman Catholics are earning their salvation. I've never met one Roman Catholic person who told me point blankly that they're trying to earn their salvation and get a good God's graces. They just have more of an outward expression of some of their posture of the faith, where evangelicals, Protestants, it tends to be more internal in the life of the mind, or in private in the soul, a private prayer life with God, and so on and so forth. And so I think that's why Protestants have resisted some of these traditions for some time. But I think that we're seeing the wisdom in them all. I mean, you think about any other thing that we care about in life. We do these external habits and practices from like the sports that we watch and enjoy during games and stuff. People do all these strange things and wear strange costumes. And we think that like somehow like that doesn't seep into our religious life. Well, we're wrong, right? Yeah. Like actually, this is something that I think we're embracing because we see the wisdom in it. We're finding that it's valuable, and we've got loved ones in our life who've done it, and they've shared that wisdom with us. And so I think it's cool for people to engage in the season of Lent. This is actually yesterday was the first Ash Wednesday service that our family hasn't gone to a service for Ash Wednesday. It's because in our previous traditions, they've had Ash Wednesday services, and my kids love it. I remember when Avery was even like 2 or 3 years old, we took like ash from our fireplace, which really isn't good ash to smear on your forehead, by the way. But she like led an Ash Wednesday service in our home. Like she gave us the sign of the ash, and we talked about it. And I just think it's kind of a neat little deal. So maybe sometime down the road, who knows, like maybe even Ridgepoint will dabble in an Ash Wednesday service down the road if we, some of our leaders would think that would be something worthwhile. Yeah. So, but we're seeing it happen more and more with each passing year.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's just good for us too to get educated on how come Catholics do this but we don't. Like I think there's and like I think you're right that we'll see those traditions begin to blend more and more. And so I think that's a good thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. Well, do you want to talk about the metaverse a little bit?
That's right. So we need to give like an update
Yes.
for we made these bold predictions, right?
Yes.
At the end of last year, coming into this year. So I think every now and again it's probably worth like checking in on, right?
Okay.
So
yes.
I made a baseball prediction. There's a good chance the baseball season's not going to happen. They've already canceled the first 2 series because these guys can't get a deal worked out, and so one of mine might
completely tank.
Yeah, might insert bomb emoji here, right? It's but you made an interesting one about the metaverse.
Yeah.
Let me just be honest. The first time you said it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of really out there. And you said that, like, you were along. It's like this, you gave a disclaimer.
Yeah.
This might be strange. But, like, more and more people got those Oculus goggles for Christmas.
Yep.
They're staying, like, they're kind of holding a pretty cheap price in regards to other tech that you can get out there.
Yep.
And so, you have any update on Metaverse and what's going on in the church world?
Yes.
With the Metaverse.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad that you teed me up for that. So yesterday, I went to this webinar thing that Life Church hosted. So Life Church is known for being really progressive and really innovative with technology and whatever. So they're one of the first churches that they're actually holding church services in the Metaverse.
Okay.
So you can put on your goggles, you can walk over to this little building, and you can actually attend a Life Church service in the Metaverse. So you're a little avatar with a bunch of other little avatars, and you're watching a church service, and you're participating in a church service. And so more and more churches are interested in this. There's been a lot of discussion about, is that even church? Can you actually do church virtually? Like, how is that different from online church? There's a lot of really interesting just conversation about that.
Right.
So since I got an Oculus a few months back, and I've been experimenting with it, I'm just personally interested in it. So I'm just keeping an eye on it. And I don't want to alarm anybody. Like, Ridgepoint isn't going to do this tomorrow. Like, I don't want people to see this and call Pastor Brent and get me in trouble. Like, it's not something that we're, like, aggressively pursuing. But I will say, one of my favorite things on the internet is if you go back, there's a lot of YouTube clips of people on the Today Show or David Letterman talking about the internet.
And what about this internet thing? Do you know anything about that?
Sure. It is the big new thing.
Yes.
Like, when the internet first came out, you can watch all these videos of people being like, what is the internet? There's no way this thing's going to catch on. It's just, nerds are just playing around. There's no way this is going to be a real thing.
That's right.
And obviously, it's the biggest thing that's probably happened in our lifetime, right?
That's right.
And so when new technology like this comes out, I just want to be aware of what's going on, see what the opportunities are, and especially with church implications, what does this mean for the church? So I attended this webinar yesterday. They're doing some really cool things. I don't know yet if it'll be a thing that a lot of churches do or not. It's really, really early, especially for churches. But one thing that they said at the webinar yesterday, which I think is just really wise, is Life Church said, whenever there's new technology, they try really hard to be a student and not a critic.
Oh, that's good.
So, like, if something new happens, instead of just jumping on the criticism bandwagon, use curiosity and humility to learn about it yourself. And so they said they didn't know what they were doing. They bought headsets and they walked around and tried to figure it out, and they built the code they needed to make this happen. And then the other cool thing is, now that they've done a lot of work to build all this code that a lot of people don't know how to do, so now Life Church is giving that code away to any church who wants to try this. So like, if a church wants to do a church metaverse service, Life Church has done all the hard work, and you just have to kind of plug and play some things to make it happen. Wow. So again, who knows if we'll ever do that or not. It's really early, but it's just an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And I think Life Church is it's leading the way in a healthy way, I would say, and how they're handling that. Yeah. So interesting thing to see where it goes from here.
It is, and I think so. Like, if I could just wax theological for a second.
Yeah.
Like, so I think one of the challenges of this is going to be, like, one of the heartbeats of Christianity is the incarnation of God, putting on flesh, dwelling among us. And like, Jesus took a nap on a boat. He served food to his friends, washed their feet, with real water and real towel. Yeah. And so Christianity needs to have a move towards the concrete, towards the real. And so I think sometimes the technology stuff or the virtual stuff rings some alarms for theological minds.
Yep.
However, one of the chief ideas of religion is this idea of, like, our life being bound together and to be whole and to have integrity. To not have multiple selves, like a work self, school self, social self, the self, who I am when I go to the Kansas City Chiefs game,
Yeah.
and then my church self, right? Like
Right.
all these different little selves around. Religion helps you to bind all that together to have a whole life. Because the trouble is if your several selves don't agree with one another, then you have like internal turmoil and dilemma. And so
Yeah.
one of the gifts that the church gives to the world is Jesus is the way to bring all of your life all summed up together, and you can be a whole person, right?
Yeah.
And what the opportunity, I think, is in the VR sphere is that people are already interacting online.
Right.
People are already hatching a virtual reality self.
Yep.
And what online or virtual reality church can do is to help, a weird term, convert their virtual reality self
Yeah.
with the gospel of Christ. And so that merges together with all the other selves that they have in the world. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity. Not only is it popular, not only is it fun, kind of interesting, but it actually might be a grace for people who are really searching for something.
Yep.
And that might be their most open, vulnerable, curious self is when they're in the virtual reality space.
Yep.
And so if we can actually create a church space there, they might actually start tracking with Jesus and his teaching
Right.
in that space. And so I think it's an interesting little push and pull as this thing develops
Yep.
in the days ahead.
You can help me out with the some of the. You'll know these verses off the top of your head more than I do. But one thing I've been thinking about, because I've been thinking about this a lot, is a lot of people are pushing back. Like you can't. It's hard for you to be worshiping by yourself with a weird headset on. Like, is that really church, right? And one verse I've been thinking about, again, you can help me. I'm sure you know this verse, is Jesus at one point. Someone comes up to him and asks Jesus to heal someone from far away.
Yes.
This, I think, was someone's daughter was a long ways away, and he said, "I believe you can heal her, even though she's not right here."
Right.
And that's one of the only times that it says that Jesus was amazed at their faith.
That's right.
He had never done that before.
Yeah.
And so Jesus was amazed at their faith that he could heal someone from a distance.
Right.
So I see a lot of parallels with VR here. Like we can worship with people from a distance.
Right.
We don't, and that's kind of a groundbreaking thing that hasn't really been done in this way before.
Right.
But I think there's some pretty cool opportunities. So, anyways.
No, I think you're right. So I think sometimes we think worship is only in rows, only in a sanctuary auditorium with churchy music going on.
Yeah.
But the word for a spiritual act of worship from Romans 12:1 is the Greek word latreia, which is like almost like the preparing of worship. It'd be like the priest organizing a burnt offering animal in the Old Testament temple community. So worship and service is actually probably more connected than just I'm singing songs out loud when music is being played.
Right.
But it's an attending to God. The Old Testament Hebrew word is to kiss towards. So anytime we kiss towards God, that's actually an act of worship.
Yep.
And so I think that if someone is in their greatest heart intention, connecting with other people, attending to the knowledge of God with an Oculus on, I think that we could say at the very bare minimum, they are giving their best. They're giving their best effort to attend towards God. That's something that's praiseworthy at some level.
Yep.
Now, people could disagree. That's fine.
Sure.
I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I feel like there's some support there.
Yeah.
That something like this, we have to at least be curious and open and not shut it down before even getting some information and even giving it a try.
Yeah.
So
again, I don't want to alarm people. We're sounding like we're really in favor of it probably to people, and we're very early.
Yes.
One kind of motto I've tried to embrace with this kind of thing is not so fast and not so slow. I don't want to be the first to do something like this. I don't want to be the last. So I'm just keeping my eye on it, seeing where this thing goes. Don't be alarmed. We'll see how this thing shakes out.
not so fast, not so slow. That's going to be like our first trending T-shirt. Not so fast, not
I like
so
it.
slow. I don't know.
I like it.
That's a good frame of reference. So yeah, I agree.
All
with
right.
you.
One more lighthearted, fun thing just to wrap it up.
Okay.
This was trending on Twitter this morning, and I loved it.
Okay.
So you know I'm a big fan of Spiderman.
Yes.
You're going through the Marvel stuff with your kids right now.
Yes.
So before this, way back, like OG Marvel.
OG.
Yes.
Nice.
When Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man 20-some years ago.
I mean, those are some good Spider-Man.
They're great. They're great movies.
Yes.
Spider-Man 3 got a lot of grief because of one particular scene.
Okay.
Where Peter Parker just kind of goes emo and does just some very strange dance moves. And like ever since then, that scene has become kind of legendary in the geek culture of just like, what in the world is Peter Parker doing, right? Okay, so this morning there's this video of this little kid. He's probably 4 or 5. And I think it looks like it maybe is some kind of like Valentine's party or something like that.
Okay.
And this little kid has the exact Tobey Maguire dance moves down like to a T. He's got the, I won't do it, but like he's got it down. And I think somehow that video just is blowing up, and people are talking about how great of a little moment this is of this little kid nailing the Peter Parker dance moves. So I loved it.
So there's a lot of questions there. First, like, what's the lady in the background doing on that video?
Yeah.
Okay, number
the
one.
poor teacher.
That's right. But number two, like, so did this kid know that a dance was coming up, and he's like, I've got to make the most of this, and so he was like training beforehand, or is it like something like he and his dad, or his like mom and dad do with him? Because like Ezra and I used to like mimic LeBron and Kevin Love's handshake. Like we saw him like, so we would do that every night before bed. Like so this is the type of stuff that you do with kids. So like I'm more interested in that. So if someone like is going to interview this kid, we got to like track that down.
What's the backstory?
Because that's amazing. That kid's got to be my spirit animal, man. That's
I
awesome.
love it. I love that kid. And I love he's getting some love on Twitter today.
That's
so
right.
Way to go, Spider-Man kid. I love it.
No, I love it, man. All right, sounds good.
Okay, we went kind of long today. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, not at all. But this was it was good to kind of sift through Ukrainian topics, the VR stuff, and just how like I don't know, like God sends us into this big bold world, and we got to figure it out. He hasn't abandoned us, but the Scripture does tell us that He has given us everything for life and godliness. So when it comes to war, when it comes to tech, when it comes to rituals, whether we should embrace them or let them go. We're not left without knowledge, without some sort of a heading. We just got to embrace it that Jesus is always with us. And so in community, we can figure this thing out. And so I hope that in some way we've kind of acted that out on trending today.
Yeah,
so,
it's good. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think with that, let's wrap it up real quick. We did have several people come up to us at the New Year's cookies last night and say that they're fans and that they're watching. So it seems like we're just doing this thing by ourselves. So anytime anyone else says they enjoyed this, I'm always just a little surprised and caught off guard and delighted.
That's right. And it kind of justifies the time that we spend at work doing it.
So thank you to those of you who watch every week. Really grateful for you hanging out with us and going through these topics.
That's good.
Let's go and wrap it up here today. So have a great Thursday, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
See ya.